Welcome to Common Hood. I'm your host, Simon P. We will welcome every neighborhood, sisterhood, and brotherhood to join Common Hood. Please hit the like, subscribe, and share. Today I have a special guest that I grew up with, Mr. Khie Blunt, a southern plant that we borrowed from Detroit, and we kept him here decades and decades, and he became a valuable, important community organizer. But before I let Khie grab the attention of your ears, I want to read something he shared in a magazine article during an interview 3 to 4 years ago. And it reads as such: it's not just Black history, it's our history. History is a people's repertoire. It tells you what you're capable of and teaches you how to skip mistakes. You don't always need to reinvent the wheel, and without the knowledge transfer, will start to lose our culture. These are the words of my brother here, Khie Blunt.
My pleasure being here.
Man, I appreciate you taking the time, because I know you have a lot of important things you always doing, and your mind always running to empower and make the world a better place.
Well, this fulfills part of the mission.
It's part of the mission for sure. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes we often be saying, they say those who don't understand their history sometimes is doomed to repeat it. But yet you have the contradiction of some people saying that happened 5 or 6 decades ago. Let it go. How do you answer that?
Many historians will tell you that the future started yesterday. You can't get anywhere you want to go without dealing with where you are now and how you got where you are now. So it's a matter of cause and effect. The things we do now affect the future. The things that happened to us in the past shape our present. And if you don't understand that past, you can't deal completely with the present or the future.
The future is today.
Or the future started yesterday.
The future starts yesterday. That's a great answer. And often when it comes to history here on this side of the Western globe, we're told to forget it. And there's even been challenges of not keeping it relevant. And one of the things that you're known for as a community organizer, that you took it very serious to assist the public schools and charter schools to possibly adopt education in African American studies beyond the segregation, beyond the Jim Crow, and beyond the civil rights. Tell us about that movement, that grassroots movement you started.
Well, when I came here in '87, we pretty immediately started to having a Saturday school program at the Wilhelmina Johnson Center. That was called Bora Jumamosi, means Super Saturday in Swahili. And every Saturday we were deprogramming some of the Eurocentric history lessons the kids were getting in school and giving them the African side of the story. Every one of those children improved in their grades and on their own self-esteem. There was not an education expert amongst our group of volunteers except for one grad student from UF College of Education. But we had a fantastic curriculum piece called Portland Curriculum that was authored under the leadership of Asa Hilliard. And we brought those kids' grades up and brought up their aspirations for their own future. They learned what they could be capable of by learning what their ancestors had already done. And we weren't teaching Black supremacy. We were teaching Black primacy. Primacy and supremacy are different. Primacy just means came first. And Homo sapiens sapiens originates from Central East Africa. So it's not saying that Black people are better to say that they started all these things, but the first iteration of Homo sapiens sapiens were dark complected people, because mammals in the sun must have full fur covering, sophisticated shelter, or some mechanism in the skin to deal with solar radiation, or they would die of skin cancer.
Well, when you said it's primacy versus not black supremacy, often in our culture by others or a certain selective group will look at it as black supremacists. And every time that seems to rear its head, it seems to be a huge problem. Like, I'm going to just use an example, Black Bath Party. That's number one. It's like before there was free and reduced lunch in school, they took the ability to try to make sure the children go to school and do everything for themselves. And it seemed like every time there was an empowerment move to align yourself with principles, it seemed to be have been torn down. But this is unique because you're saying the primacy is understanding where things originated from.
Right.
And out of curiosity, those children that was in that program, what kind of triggered in them to be empowered? Did it more so empower them to know?
Well,
like what was the light bulb for them?
I think as soon as they began finding out things that came before the civil rights movement and slavery, they began to it sparked their drive to learn. They wanted to know more and more. We had to make them leave at the end of a session day every Saturday. They wanted more and more information because it gave them courage and strength. They loved knowing their history. Back in 1990, a group I worked with here presented a petition to the school board with over 700 signatures demanding Black history education in the Alachua County school system. In response, the board at that time, because of the pushing of Charles Chestnut III, who was the one who brought Portland curriculum to town, the tool I told you we used at the Saturday school, that board set up a multicultural curriculum task force, gave it a budget, appointed myself, Reverend Thomas, a few other people in the community to be on this multicultural curriculum task force, but they appointed a very overloaded mid-level manager to be our staff liaison. And if we had known at the time, if they were serious, they would have had a board member lead that. But they just let us run down the money and drink a lot of coffee and go to a lot of meetings and didn't change anything. Now, more recently, in the 2019-2020 school year, the board committed to having a Black history or African history or hybrid in every high school, no matter how the sign up went. You know, they were saying that they had tried before and not enough people signed up. This time they said, we're going to do it no matter what. They ended up with waiting lists. But, you know, for one thing, that was the school year that was interrupted by COVID. And the book, the book they had, the textbook, it said African-American history, and the cover showed two women dressed in raggedy burlap clothes out in a field filling bags with cotton. That was the image for African-American history that they were presenting. And the first third of the book had a slight recap of history before the colonies in North America, but the part of Europe, the part on European and African history before that time, made no mention of 774 years that Africans, the Moors, were running the whole area that's now Spain and Portugal, giving them irrigation, public sanitation, universal education, ocean navigation, and a pluralistic, tolerant society. It was multicultural, multi-religious, and women had full rights.
Basically gave everybody
774 years just ignored.
So,
and that was the second time that Africa civilized Europe. The first was when the Greeks and the Romans came begging to the Nile Valley to learn, from Thales, the first Greek philosopher, down to Plato. And all the ones they call their heroes, Hippocrates, Herodotus, Solon, the lawgiver, all these people came to the Nile Valley to learn. And when Socrates was condemned to die, and Socrates may have been made up by Plato, but when he was condemned to die, the charge that Aristides made against him was teaching a foreign philosophy and corrupting the mind of the youth.
But do you think with that much history to be ignored, do they feel like it's a threat, or do you think it's a reason why they want to suppress that? Because it should be.
Well, back then,
it's part of our history, so it should be.
But back then, the Greeks just had a concept they called the other. There was no ranking. They looked toward Africa, and I prefer to say Alkebulan, but we know the word Africa. That's actually a Greek imposed word. They looked toward Africa and saw people that looked different and had these amazing buildings and accomplishments, and they just said, well, they're different, they're the other, without any idea of conquest or ranking. It was in the Middle Ages, from about the year 1000 forward, that racist ideas began to become racism, where there was a denigration of people who look different.
That's been that nail in the coffin on what we see today, on why it's been such a resistance to include that history. So, you know, today and speed it up in today's age of 2026, you know, you had the big DEI push of saying it didn't need to be in there. But when you consider over here in the West, at least in America, you know, we've had that racism be a part of our fabric society for a long time. Now, I don't know why it's something wrong with this sharing the truth.
Well,
I don't know why, but it for whatever reason, it's been blockaded. But that was one of the things I like about your grassroots movement. You wasn't trying to give separation. You was just trying to give an inclusivity of all, to share history for all. There was no pump the fist, I'm more superior than you. You just trying to say, no, we all have a history. Let's share it, whether it's good or bad. And that's why I loved your grassroots movement through your community organizing. And how challenging is that now in today's time, where all of a sudden the big push with the current leadership saying, hey, just get rid of DEI and we control the history and the narrative.
Well, what we do, all the years that I was pushing the school board, and there was a 15-year period where I was at almost every meeting, just giving a 3-minute history capsule in the public comments section, since they weren't, you know, taking it to the classroom. But all those years, I kept saying that the Black history in the school should be just an echo of Black history in the community. We should not be counting on the public system to protect and project our history. They should be reflecting what we tell them we know, which means we've got to learn it. The captive Africans were brought to this country. They were separated by language groups. They were forced under violence to give up their religions, names, clothing, music, every custom of their previously powerfully self-determined life was stripped away in order to make them tools of the economy over here. So racism, the triangular slave trade developed in the 1500s, and racism was needed to support that. They had to decide that these people they were torturing so terribly were something less than human. That it was almost like handling animals.
That's the part of history, and it's not the favor of the current way things are with DEI, you know. But that's the kind of history that was always showed. So when the DEI challenge came out about getting rid of it, I was like, well, they're only getting rid of the negative part. And it's funny because most of us that know any history of positivity, it pretty much came outside of the control curriculum of public school. So, but for today's, with all the technology today, and with the lack of it in school, and sometimes our conveniences that we have now, we tend to forget. So what do you recommend for those African American students to help them familiarize themselves with their own history, especially when it comes to African American history, where most say, I can't worry about what's going on in Africa. I hadn't been there.
Well, since most of our kids are in the public system, I would say, first of all, be willing to take what you're told with a grain of salt. The state government, the State Department of Education, I saw the standards, the new standards they issued in 2025, and they want teachers to teach the students that enslaved people benefited from slavery by learning essential skills. And that stomps on graves. The people
they
who were
benefited?
captured, people who were captured came over here with skills. All that beautiful ironwork you see in places like Savannah and Mobile and New Orleans.
Washington D.C., all over.
There were findings of high carbon steel at 5,000-year-old mine locations at Great Zimbabwe. So metallurgy goes that far back.
Stick a little red pen in it. Make sure I heard you correct. You're saying the new 2025 curriculum is stating that the descendants of slavery benefited from slavery.
That they're saying the enslaved people, while they're enslaved, they were learning skills, and that was good for them. They brought rice culture with them. They brought metalwork with them. They brought use of herbs as medicine with them. In fact, they concentrated when in village raiding. The scholars, the healers were particularly taken away, and as well as many children. So that trade developed.
You know how they say to Kali, they brought the Holy Bible and left with all the land and the people.
Well, that's a whole nother story. The King James Version was adapted from the Holy Roman Catholic Bible.
Yes.
The Holy Roman Catholic Bible was adapted from the Ethiopian Bible. So
that's been touted a lot more lately. Have like 4 or 5 books that's missing from the Bible as we know it today.
All those missing books are in the Vatican Library. There ain't nothing missing.
Okay.
In many congregations, they have something called the Nicene Creed that is recited. That was done in 325 AD after Constantine forced a conference to come together to iron out the doctrinal differences that were happening in different regions, because they were causing him administrative and political problems. It was getting in the way of his tax collecting that people were fighting over these religious differences. So he told all the bishops, y'all come together and settle this stuff. And the bishop said, well, no, this is the inspired word of God. And he started lopping off heads, and they came together and they streamlined the doctrine at his
violence do a lot
his
to you,
violent command.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we think about the students and the youth, as well as communities, how can we both work together to keep our stories going? What do you see that's missing now that probably wasn't there before? That was there before, but it's missing now.
There's been some important attempts, like the Black Power movement that came up in the 60s, 70s, a little into the 80s. But I want to see us cure that artificial case of amnesia that was imposed on those captives. By stripping them of all those aspects of self, it created an artificial case of amnesia. If you look up amnesia in the diagnostic manual of psychiatry, you see self-destructiveness, impulsive behavior, hedonism, lack of impulse control. Sound familiar to you?
That's how they try to label a lot.
Yeah, but that
with those same words,
that lack of a sense of self. People think the Black Power movement involved a lot of pride and emotive, reactive behavior against oppression, but emotions ebb. The deep knowledge is what's really important. So that's why I say, first of all, students, take with a grain of salt what you're hearing at school, because you got these standards like I just described. And then get the true knowledge. There's a particular book I wish to have everybody read. It's called Africa, Mother of Western Civilization.
It's Africa, Mother of Western Civilization, which is the civilization we live in here now. And I guess this title alone sounds like, if you want to learn a lot about how Western got their civilization, read this book.
And it is by a scholar of Ethiopian descent, but he spent time in the Caribbean. His last posting was at a couple of United States universities, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan. So I would urge people to get that book. I hope to start reading circles, invite people in to read that book. People need to know the things that originated from our people. The fact that pyramids were built using spherical geometry, i.e. calculus. And these monuments go back, 6,000 years.
Right.
That Africans were sailing on the ocean.
They didn't have any bobcats and they didn't have the equipment to get that done back then.
Right.
Still remains a curiosity.
We still don't totally know how did they move that monumental stone. Right. Millions of stones in the Great Pyramid, weighing many tons each, fit together so perfectly you can't slide a piece of paper between them. So,
well, I think answering the question here, listening to you, first of all, the book, and the book shows is that's one book, but we have to get to reading. And second of all, when I look at your community organizing efforts, like every community have to have a leader emerge to keep it going and form these clusters to have this knowledge, to have a continuance, so you won't have that amnesia that you mentioned.
That scares me.
That scares you?
We have this savior complex. We don't need a leader to emerge. We
More
need
than hundreds to
emerge. We have fallen into that trap so many times. A single leader is taken out, locked up, assassinated. Right. The movement falls flat.
Absolutely.
We need to stop that.
I'm glad you clarified that. We do need to stop. I remember going to community college here in Gainesville, Santa Fe Community College. This is my days of fresh getting out of my bid in the military. And I've taken
I think that's when I met you.
An English class. And the end of the paper that was written on it was like a little documentary of Martin Luther King. But after we watched it, the cinema froze, and they said, if we kill him now, where will they go? And that's a perfect example of what you just said about we don't need a savior, a leader. We need hundreds of them. So increasing our leadership, sharing our information in our community, and just establishing a good reading club to give more exposure for those who want it. And at the same time, establish people that are willing to lead and be proactive with getting that message out.
I hope people develop the feeling that we need it. This story of self is something that was stolen from us. In fact, there's a book called Stolen Legacy, another great book they should look at.
Yes, I'm familiar with that one. I'm familiar with Stolen Legacy.
And when somebody steals something from you, they don't show up at your door saying, here, I'm sorry, I took this.
No.
You have to take it back.
They keep running and running.
If it's valuable, then you're going to have to take it back. And we have to put to lie the old joke that you hide something from Black people by putting it in a book. We have the original intellects, and we have to use that. And get into this knowledge. If so many more of our people have that deep knowledge, we will see, spontaneously, a rising of that huge leadership cadre that we need.
Well, none of this change, just like you say, it ain't about Black power. You know, you always wonder, like going back to the why. And when I say the why, it's like making us think on how to connect all parts of the history and let ours fit in this puzzle, that they have got a matrix of a puzzle that they just refuse to put those pieces in. And this always makes you wonder, like, why? And that's what made people sometimes get defeated thinking that as long as that type of people are in control, that the message will never resonate the where it needs to give everybody exposure. And to me, when I look up at Black history, I'm very proud of it, because it's like, wow, I didn't know we invented so much and gave so much, and others just pretty much expounded on it. But it's the hardest one is the creator of it. And that for me, what keeps me motivated I've been left the mindset was in school. And it happened to me when I first got out of school. I was able to be at that time stationed in New Jersey. And my exposure up there, I quickly realized there was a difference between what I was getting here in the South, besides this beautiful weather, beautiful beaches, and beautiful lakes, and beautiful springs, which I love it, compared to what was up in the New York, New Jersey area for its consciousness relating to our history. And I'm gonna leave you with this here so you can reflect on it. Can you leave us with some thoughtful insights on what we all can do collectively outside of the books you mentioned and establish more leadership? Anything else you want to add on to that to close us out?
Well, I really love something that we kind of brought up in Gainesville through that Saturday school program I mentioned, which is Kwanzaa. And, you know, we celebrate Kwanzaa from the day after Christmas, the 26th, to January 1st. But I want people to believe that Kwanzaa is 52 weeks a year. So this past Kwanzaa started on a Friday, which means that every Friday this year until Kwanzaa comes around again, try to do something that emphasizes unity, that first principle of Kwanzaa. And I'll tell you, every Monday this year, I'm going to try to patronize a Black business, because that was the fourth day of Kwanzaa this past time, which is Ujamaa, cooperative economics. So we have to support each other. The Black dollar turns over, guess how many times? 1/2 turnover in our community.
Think it was that.
And in many other communities, in the Asian community, the dollar turns over something like 19 times. In the white community, 15 times. In our community, it's gone. You should hear a rushing sound around Walmart. How our dollars leave our community so fast.
We kind of fell for the Kool-Aid. Like, something happened when we did have one thing about pre-civil rights. They had theaters and movie theaters. Well, can you name me a movie theater now?
No.
They had hospitals. Can you name me a hospital now? They had hotels. Can you name me a hotel now? They have banks. You can find some banks that are online banks. So, in closing out, remember those two principles of Kwanzaa, but I'm just going to say it with terms people can know. Unity and collaborative economics effort is one of the ways to help strengthen the bond, along with reading a book in history. More leaders need to be, and just be more in tune and more willingly as elders that you got to get this information out and create leaders as well. Can't take the knowledge to the grave. And that's what something that you refuse to do, because you always sharing history and you let everybody know. It don't matter where they come from. And you make everybody get involved with a discussion to not create the separatism or racism. It's like, no, this honor that this was fact.
There's always opportunities to share history. Right. So I say, learn the history and show off for each other.
Okay.
Share this history and just repeat it all the time.
All the time. Well, Khie, I appreciate you coming to Common Hood.
Thank you.
But Common Hood gonna have to ask you that, since we have YouTube as a platform these days, that I think your knowledge need to be taught and shared more, because that's where the children are at right now on YouTube. They have these phones in their hand 24/7. So hopefully somebody out of 100 will say, check this out, man. Khie be dropping these 15-minute and I'm just in tune. I don't worry about history anymore. I got it. So I'm hoping to join you, have you come on plenty more times with hopefully a lot of scholars, so we can work on trying to get a little book club going here and make some things happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us today on Common Hood. This is Simon P. with the #1 community organizer that put the boots to the ground, Khie Blunt. We out.